Welcome to my no, it's not my conversation, it's Conversations with Deborah, a bi-coastal dialogue heard exclusively on malcolmpresents.com. Just for those new, malcolmpresents.com is a internet platform that has about half a dozen to a dozen shows at a time. And all you have to do is go to malcolmpresents.com and you're privy to all our shows and all our past shows. And I know Deborah's fascinated by this.
I am. It's fascinating that you're on one coast, my former home state of California, and I'm back here on the East Coast in South Carolina. Moved back here about 6 years ago. Former news reporter, enjoyed being a news reporter for a long, long period of time, but it was time to move on. I ended up getting into the loan business with Home Savings and then Bank of America and what have you. But
Are you a loan shark?
no, you know what? I am very much, and I think one of the reasons that I ended up leaving Bank of America was that I really was concerned about the overall focus on the extremely wealthy. And I have been very much an advocate of money management for ordinary people like you and me. We have far more economic power than we have any idea. And I am very much an advocate. I think we'll probably end up starting to bring that to fruition with the show here, because I think it's important. We need to understand what our economic power is, especially under these very tough economic times. And we'll talk about in a couple minutes about some of the coming issues of the economy. It's not going to be bright and shiny, I must say.
So why are they raising the interest rate?
They'll do it in March. What we're doing as a family here, we moved back from California. My husband and I moved back, as I say, about 6 years ago, primarily because we could see that the affordability in California was gone. And as middle class folks, there's no way we could have continued to afford the $2,300 to $2,700 a month for a 700 square foot duplex that we shared with families. And we realized that our source of income was going to be starting to be limited. We did a handyman business, and I also did some financial planning and blah, blah, blah. But it was getting to a point where we really could not afford some of the basics of overall living. So we had to make that decision. And it was a very tough decision. I'm writing a book about it because it was, instead of go west, it's now go east, young lady. And it was a heartbreaking decision because my parents worked very hard after the war, to leave New England and to come out to California, which used to be very, very a lot of opportunity, a lot of ways for middle class families to be able to grow and what have you.
Well, what part of New England are you from?
Pardon?
What part of New England is your family from?
From Providence, Rhode Island,
Yeah.
Part of the Hooker family, and of course Hooker Furniture did very, very well. And after the Depression, my mom's mom got into the candy business and what have you. Always been entrepreneurs and what have you. In fact, my uncle.
No wonder why you got married. They always say, "Oh, Deborah, she's a real hooker."
That's true. And I was embarrassed when I was a kid to make fun of the name. No, Hooker is quite a name, a last name with quite a bit of history, I must say. And
well, for those who are unfamiliar, who might speak English as a second language, a hooker is another name for a prostitute.
Yes, yes. And as a kid, I made fun of it, and of course, that just raised the eyebrows of all of the entire Hooker family when we were at a family reunion. So I was the bad California blonde. So what else is new?
When you got older, say, "Oh, she's an old hooker."
I know, I know. So we're waiting for a storm to come in. What's interesting is that we're starting to feel the effects. And once again, it's very interesting. Our little house here, it's a 1948 little bungalow just north of Greenville downtown, which has been nice. Very much a working class neighborhood, which is exactly what we wanted. No pretensions here, I must say. And we've got a flock of chickens to bring us fresh eggs, and we have 6 cats that found us. And now they work as a great weather prediction. They have been very, very agitated, which means that the barometric pressure is now going down. And I understand the East Coast is bracing for quite a nor'easter. One of your, which one was your young ladies that does a podcast with you that's in New York? Who is that again?
She's in Chappaqua, Maxine.
Very
Maxine
good.
Margot Rubin.
And I can recommend her show. It's about what's it called? Green gardening and what have you.
No. Well, the two shows that we have, one of them is called Many Shades of Green, which basically right now is only on audio. I have a video portion of it also, which is older, but you can see both. And basically, she's been involved for the last 20 years for ecology, trying to save our planet, and she's getting very frustrated. But what we might do, I might do like a green network with her shows, like do an offshoot of it with her shows, and maybe there are a lot of groups that we're speaking to that have their own individual podcasting. But take this and put it in one place.
Well, I tell you, we're having some phenomenally cold weather. We're expecting tomorrow that we'll wake up to temperatures 10 degrees, 8 degrees. So we will make sure that the heater is on extra high for the chickens. I don't care what anybody says. Chickens may have feathers. That's their little down parkas, but I'll be doggone if our chickens are going to be cold. And all the cats at this point right now are basically making circles around the house. They can feel the change in barometric pressure. And we won't probably get the snow that we got 10 days ago. In fact, a lot of that snow is still on the ground, which is amazing to me. That's very unusual for Greenville. And all of that is now going up into the Northeast. But I think that our president did nail it when President Biden said this is going to be a long, cold, and deadly winter. And it is going to be. Moving on to a topic which is near and dear to my heart, talking about economic freedom for the normal average person. As I said, I had dipped out of the stock market the end of December and wanted to make a clean break of it. Fortunately, my timing was fine because you can see the situation happening still with the supply chain problems, with the number of ships that are still parked off Long Beach and Los Angeles waiting to come on in. And the announcement, of course, with GDP yesterday was talking about a 6.7% GDP. That's a gross national product, which talks about the health of the economy. Now, it was well touted as being, oh, this is great. We're in great economic shape and all of that. But if you strip down the actual numbers, which I enjoy doing to find out, the actual growth was about 1.7%. The reason for that was that many consumers like you and me, but especially I know for me, my family, we're cutting back on our spending tremendously, dramatically. We're now really starting to see empty shelves. We go to a day-old bakery because I don't want to pay full price. And the day-old bakery shelves are completely empty. Walmart, same situation. Publix, same situation. Empty shelves.
Well, I have a question which I'm confused about.
Mhm.
The supply chain is not there, but are we running out of produce and things because of the supply chain, or do we
Well,
have the products?
well,
If-
what's interesting about that is, and I'm glad that you asked that question. We're okay here in South Carolina because we're surrounded by multitudes of large farms and smaller farms. They are having problems getting such things as fertilizer because the price of fertilizer has doubled and tripled in many cases. They're having problems getting seeds, same situation. They're starting to pass those costs on to us. However, all that being said, when we go to our local produce market, which we do, we're still seeing, although there's less produce out there, we're still getting fresh produce. So that's what we're going to end up doing. As I say, being in a small but large town like Greenville, we can really rely on the local farmers, and the local farmers are going to be relying on us to buy their goods rather than going to a Walmart or a Publix for.
But how about the manufactured goods? It seems like everybody's complaining about a lot of produce is not on the shelf. But again, is it because the boats are backed up, or there's no manufacturing of it? I know with the computer chips is
Mhm.
really crucial. And I don't see why our government didn't, or people in the government or manufacturers in this country didn't see that ahead of time. I mean, it's not some, to me, it's new.
Yeah.
But to people that were in business, I don't know why they didn't see that beforehand, or they knew that China was making 80% of it, or they didn't care because it was cheaper.
I know that when I took my MBA from Pepperdine University back so many years ago, they used to be talking about having a 60 and 90-day supply of a whole variety of different things. That started to change in the 90s and 2000s. So they decided to go a just-in-time philosophy. The problem with just-in-time is if your supplier happens to be overseas and that supplier decides to shut down, in the case of China, they're shutting down for even a single COVID case. And if that supply chain from China stopped because of a single COVID case, because it's impossible, I have to tell you, to stop all of COVID, but nonetheless, that supply chain stops, all of a sudden you might only have 14 to 18 days. In fact, Ford Motor says they have only 14 to 18 days worth of computer chips, semiconductor computer chips. Now, interestingly enough, though, Taiwan Semiconductor is now moving into Texas to build a large plant. Intel is now starting to build a large plant in Ohio. And so as we start to bring some of these critical portions of our economy, i.e. the semiconductors and the chips back here to America, we'll be in better shape. But it's going to take some time, Malcolm. It's going to take some time.
Now my question is,
Mhm.
you say like Korea is going to build factories here. Would they be American goods then, or would they be, if it's owned by Korea, but yet
And it's owned by Taiwan. But
Taiwan?
well, technically speaking, I suppose you could say it would be Taiwanese. However, the fact is that from the mere fact that you are actually on US soil, you're employing US workers, and you don't have a situation, as much of a situation than if you were importing across the sea from Taiwan.
Which makes me come back to my original premise I said months ago. It's an international economy. There's really no American goods or Chinese goods. It's where the parts, because a lot of American goods are built in America, are really, the parts are foreign. The
Yeah,
parts
that's
are
true.
made in different countries. But again, basically, getting back to my original question with the supply chain,
Mhm.
there are supplies, but it's out in the ocean.
Yeah,
So why is it out in the ocean? But we
there's
have the
component
supplies.
parts sitting out in the ocean, waiting to be unloaded.
Why?
Well, from what I understand, and I used to live in the Long Beach, Lakewood area when my late husband Tom and I were there. And my sources, I'm sorry, I'm still a news reporter type. My sources is indicating the fact that many truckers cannot get into the ports because of the change in air pollution standards by the AMQD, ADM. Anyway, the air pollution standards, the agency there, and it was passed by the lawmakers. Why they don't do some sort of an emergency situation, allowing some of these truckers to get in, is beyond me. And that's where you and I agree. I mean, I may be on the conservative side of things, although I am an independent, and you're a Democrat, and you're more onto the liberal side of things. But here's one issue that we agree upon. Why in the world doesn't Pete Buttigieg put his big boy pants on and go ahead and tell California, this is an emergency. We need to get the goods off these ships. We've got to get them into America. What's also interesting now is that Canada, apparently the truckers are revolting against Trudeau. Trudeau, who's saying that you must have a vaccination. Well, there's apparently 40,000 truckers that are going from Vancouver all the way to Quebec, the capital city. And they have, of all things, Canadians don't have a reputation for being all that mad about things, but they apparently are being greeted on highway overpasses with cheers and signs and what have you. And the movement is growing where the truckers are saying, listen, we're in a truck all day, for crying out loud. Why do we need to be masked? Why do we need a vaccination, for crying out loud? Leave us alone. But they don't want to leave them alone.
That's a whole other question. I think all people are mandatory should be vaccinated. I think it's the same way we're supposed to be, the US government's supposed to protect us against war, right?
Mhm.
That's one of their, we are in a war, but we're not in a war with people. We're in a war with microbes. We're in war with viruses. This is definitely a war. If you see how many people were killed, how many people are sick, how many people are in the hospital, it
Mhm.
is a war more extensive than any of our world wars or the Civil War. We're killing more people worldwide. So there has to be like emergency measures.
Well,
And
we've
the
got six
people who are
six million
protesting,
people. 6 million people have died so far
right,
in terms of the word world death. But
right.
the problem, of course, at this point right now, and you start to scratch your head and go, wait a minute, didn't you tell me if I got vaccinated? Because I got both vaccines, as did my husband, plus the booster shot, which we got right on time. We were glad to get them. Um, it's apparently not protecting us from Omicron.
No, but it's protecting us from death or the most likely of death because most of the people that are dying, have not been vaccinated. Now, the thing is also, which it's almost like you go to any doctor. I'm going to the doctors now as I get older and more doctors, right?
Mhm.
They don't know what's wrong. A lot of the things that I have, oh, that's age related. It's age related
Right?
macular degeneration. It's
Yeah.
age related, back problems. What do I do about it? Well, try this pill, try that pill. They
Yeah.
don't know. Medicine or our pandemic,
Mhm.
we don't know the answer. We only can like do the best research possible. So when Fauci changes or the doctors change what they know, it's because they didn't know that thing, the facts that they have today, they didn't know that 6 months ago. So they change it when new facts come in. I would be upset if they didn't change it, if they kept to the old knowledge. But
But
they are
that's
using
exact.
the new
But that's
knowledge.
exactly what they've done. We now have proof from emails that Dr. Fauci went ahead and ruined the careers of many doctors in places like Harvard and Stanford, and basically said that any of the alternative methods of controlling this pandemic were moot. Um, I agree with you. We need to have more information, but once again, that's being labeled as quote unquote misinformation. For example, the big deal with Neil Young saying, get Joe Rogan off the air, off Spotify. He does a podcast where everyone is saying, oh, it's misinformation. It's this because Rogan apparently got COVID and he treated it differently than anybody else wanted it to be treated, et cetera, et cetera. Well, to Spotify's credit, they said to Neil Young, see ya, pal. Forget about your music. We're going to stick with Joe Rogan. And once again, I mean, I just think we need to have good, clear information that's coming from other sources, from doctors. I mean, I remember everybody poo-pooing hydrochloroquine. I can barely pronounce it myself, but apparently it did help save some people from some awful situations.
We're right, but I think the misinformation and the different type of cures that they have that are out has caused more harm than good. And I think that again, I'm liberal, but I don't think we have freedom of speech on the uh, on the internet, or we shouldn't,
Well,
because
I agree that if you have some guy that's just, doing something nuts and what have you, and then advocating it, yes. But if you have separate types of studies, I mean, these many of these studies that came through indicated the fact that there were some alternative ways of treating COVID-19. Now, for example, I got the doggone thing. It is horrendous. I got it February of 2020. This is just prior to the country being shut down. I got to tell you, it was profound. I could not breathe. I had like they talk about an elephant on your chest. Absolutely. I was dizzy, you name it. I was very, very concerned. And how did I end up treating it? Because I had no idea what I had. I thought I had a terrible flu, but I knew it was something different. Once again, massive amounts of vitamin D, zinc, magnesium, vitamins, and vitamin C. And then I stayed in bed. I didn't go running around. People who don't, even with basic flu, for heaven's sakes, Malcolm, stay in bed. Don't infect other people. So I don't know. I do wish that we would have had far more conversations with scientists, with people in the know, researchers, rather than just having this pronouncement from Dr. Fauci. And apparently now there seems to be some evidence vis-a-vis some emails that have now surfaced that the NIH, the National Institute of Health, was in fact funding some of the change, what's called gain of function, where you change the actual DNA of very dangerous viruses to make them even more dangerous. And apparently it was apparently being funded through Wuhan lab. I mean, I don't care whose blame it is. Let's just find out how it happened and get it taken care of. We don't need to lose another 6 million people.
Again, that's another topic altogether, how it originated, because we could spend, I mean, people are spending months doing it. We don't know. But the question is, we have now a new form of communications on the internet, whether it be the Facebook, whether it be whatever that I don't know about, the Twitter, the thing.
Twitter, the Rumble, the Spotify.
Are we allowing all of these groups just to say anything they want, even in the TV with, which like Tucker Carlson, like he said, he's not everybody thinks he's a newscaster. He's the one that says he's not a newscaster. He does opinions, but a lot of the things that he says are totally nonsense. Now, the thing is, should he be on the air saying what he's saying, and people saying, "Oh, didn't you see what Tucker say, or Hannity, or any of the broadcasters on Fox, and also some of the broadcasters on CNN or MSNBC? Should they have full reign for what they say?"
And who makes the determination as to what should be said and what shouldn't be said? We have championed free speech because our origins from England are such that we did not even have free speech. We didn't even have representation without being taxed.
I agree. We should have freedom of the press, which was the original, right?
The original was freedom of speech, and also the pursuit of happiness and liberty.
So does freedom of speech extend to the internet now? Does it extend to actually radio and television? At one time, television didn't have free speech. In fact, even now on broadcast TV, you can't curse. You can't use any 4-letter words. Even on parts of on the internet, which I do, I can't use it. And now the question is, you go to any conversation, any group of people, educated college graduates, professors, doctors, go into a conversation over a cocktail party. The F word is sprinkled in there.
Of course.
I mean, it's part of common usage now. But the question is, so should this be banned on broadcast television?
No, once again, it's a matter of people talking about decorum, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm more concerned about the labeling by entities saying this is misinformation, this is not information, this is not true, and what have you. For example, the whole origin story was said as misinformation about the Wuhan labs.
What were you talking about? The origin story? Do you believe in Adam and Eve? The origin story, Adam and Eve. That's the origin story.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
The bottom line is that we just need. In fact, I had a very interesting conversation. Went over to Home Depot a couple of days ago. We were getting things prepped for the next storm that was coming on in, and went into the ladies' restroom, and there was a young lady that was.
We're getting the inside of being in the ladies' restroom in Greenville, South Carolina. Exclusive.
Absolutely. Well, it was fascinating. It was fascinating, and I must say, and I know this sounds cornball, but I'm sorry, this is what I do, is that when I do see people who are actually working, I thank them for being there. It's very important. They get a thank you. And I hope you're doing the same thing, young man, because these people who are actually working, we need them. So I thanked this young woman and was washing my hands and what have you. And suddenly it occurred to me, wait a minute, I need to make more than just simply a thank you. And I turned to her and I said, What are your thoughts about this black-white divide that's going on in America? And there was this long silence. And she said, I think it's horrible. I said, why do you think it's horrible? She said, because it classifies people as things, not as people, but as things. Incidentally, she was Black. And I said, could you do me a favor? We're talking about this, and this conversation, this one-on-one conversation we're having right now is so critical to the safety of America, to the continuation of America. It's so important that we discuss these issues. I said, the history of America is not wonderful. We've had issues. Obviously, we've had issues, but we've always tried to work towards the common good. And I'm very concerned about having, for example, COVID treatment in New York City being denied because an individual is white versus an individual being Black. That has nothing to do with anything. I'm also concerned about, for example, pardon me, we now have a president who says he's going to choose, since Stephen Breyer, Supreme Court Breyer, has now decided to resign, that he's now going to appoint a Black woman. Now, as a woman, I resent that, because the most qualified individual, whether it be a man or a woman, should be on the Supreme Court. I also, and it was interesting because she also resented the fact that it was labeled as being a Black woman. I said, how do you feel about that? She says, I'm resentful of that, because then if whoever that individual is always going to be noted as the first Black woman, the Black woman, the Black. Baloney. Nothing about her or his qualifications. We got to get this. We're a land of opportunity, a land of entrepreneurship. We have got to break down these barriers, and putting up more and more barriers. And I got to tell you, the president has got blame here.
Listen, I'll tell you, those barriers have been up for the last 70, 80 years.
I understand that, but you've got to start breaking them down. You don't keep making sure that those differentiations continue.
If you remember, there used to be a Jewish seat, which Judge Louis Brandeis was a Jewish seat, I think, and he succeeded Felix Frankfurter.
Yep.
And that was a Jewish seat. Now I think, I don't know how many, I think there are two Jewish justices, but they were Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a Jewish seat. So that's always been like that. Most of the seats, our country is based on white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, or as we used to call them, WASPs. And that's it. Now, the thing which I want to talk about, you're talking about a Black woman, which if I refer to as a person, he's a Black something or other. If I would describe you, I would say you're a tall blonde. Now, this is your physical appearance. Now, if I'm talking about a Black person, or if I'm saying, I have a friend of mine, he's, some people say African American, but I don't know any, I know very few people from Africa that are Americans. So I know people that, but if I'm just, it's only a physical description, has nothing, then people put different feelings about that. Oh, he said Black, he's prejudiced. No, I'm not. I'm just describing a physical feature.
Well, it also depends upon what the environment is. So, for example, when I was in the news business and when I was in the lending business with home savings, to be described as a tall blonde was not appropriate. All right. It's not appropriate. If I'm having dinner with friends, being described as a tall blonde, I'm fine with that. It's the context. It's that whole situation. And for example, I have some friends here that just hate Blacks. And I got to tell you, we get into a conversation at a dinner table about that, I'm excusing myself, because there is no place for this anymore. We have got to come together. This is ridiculous.
I totally agree with you.
See, there we go.
What I was talking about something else. Now I'm forgetting.
Anyway, the one thing I do want to talk about is economically, we're coming into some very, very troubled times. I'm not going to be talking about uh, a horrific situation, but I think we have a very good opportunity, a very good chance in terms of recession. I am asking and advising all of the people that I talk with financially, please start consolidating your credit card debt. If you need to use balance transfers, use them very judiciously. Balance transfers can be very, very good because you'll end up paying, for example, with Discover, the Discover card, you'll end up paying anywhere from 3 to 5% flat fee of the amount of money that you're going to be borrowing. Take that money and apply it to those credit card bills that are charging you 29 to 30%. Talk about mafia type interest, but get rid of those credit card bills.
Yeah, well,
Consolidate.
When I was a teenager, that would be called usury.
Absolutely.
Oh, speaking about that, maybe next week's show we'll talk about financial advice. But I might be putting on a new show with a guy, not a friend of mine, but a neighbor of mine, Matt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he's a young guy. I think he's like about 26, 27 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure what he does. He's day trading, but he's very much involved in the market and stocks and bonds. And because every time I see him in the gym, I say, what about this? It's because the market is so volatile, right? Not till. So what I want to do is I might do a show with him. We're still talking about it, like on Friday afternoon, and call it, market wrap up. I do like about 15 minutes and him analyzing what happened in the market that week, and then do tips for the future week. So it could be a 15-minute show, it could be a half-hour show. And this might be a show that I might get you involved with.
I'd love to. I'd love to.
For an older perspective, I hate to say for an older perspective.
Well, it's very funny because people ask me, why in the world are you possibly involved in the stock market? And once again, I want to tell you, I sold my stocks the end of this last year on the 31st. I'm back in it again. So I'm back in at about 70% of my allowable cash. But once again, it's like I hate to use the word, it's like a form of gambling. It is, but it's not. You are investing in good, solid companies. But the great thing about having a show with an individual who is in the mid-20s, early 30s, is that individual can give us insight as to what he or she is buying, how the trends are, exactly what's going. And that's what you're doing is you're looking at those overall trends, and you can make a couple of $100, which is a lot more money than you can get from a bank.
What I'm interested, because I'm not interested in the market. To me, I'd rather go to the horse races. I mean, I did some investing, probably about 15, 20 years ago. Not that much money, maybe, $10, $20, $30,000. I think $30,000 the most.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand the tension. Like I look at the stock market, which I can't, I know you're not supposed to do, but I look at it every day, rising, falls, what's happening, blah, blah, blah. I'd rather go to, at those days, I'd rather go to Hollywood Park.
Well, let me give you
$10 on a race in 2 minutes.
But let me give you a little tip. Okay. First and foremost, do not be looking at your stock portfolio every single day, because if you are, it means you've not chosen it correctly. What you're looking for are companies that have good, solid cash flow. You're looking at debt. They've got to have a small amount of debt. They've got to have good, what's called operating income, which means after they've done all of their stuff, what is there? And it's exactly like running a family budget. Precisely.
When I bet on the horses, what I did is there was a monthly sheet called the telly, a daily.
Oh yeah, okay.
You go to the telly, you go to a race, let's say the first race. It tells you everything about the horse. It tells you what he did, what his times were, his quarter miles, the day before. It tells you whether when he went to the bathroom. If he's constipated or if he has diarrhea, it really tells you everything. Yeah. And what you do is take all that information. Then you take a look at the competition he's going with. You take a look at the length of the race, whether he's ever looked at that race before, or that distance before. The time of the day, who's his jockey. There's so much information. It's not only, I like the name. And then in 2 minutes, it's over.
Well, guess what? You are exactly doing precisely what a stock picker needs to do,
Right.
going back to the fundamentals, because I'll tell you folks, time to rein in your credit, get rid of the credit card debts, and you can look towards the stock market and do exactly what Mr. Malcolm has done. You look at those sheets and you can tell exactly where to put your money.
It's due diligence, and we're going to get you involved. And if
Okay.
it doesn't work out with Matt, or if it does, we're going to get you involved either way, because we might just do another show. You'll have to
Okay.
go to another room in the house.
Oh,
As but anyway, Art, believe it or not, our time is up.
oh. Well, we had a good conversation today, did we not?
We have a good conversation every week.
Yeah,
Sometimes
we really
better
do.
than others. But anyway, do me a favor, keep
Yes,
warm, keep
I will.
safe,
I will. You too.
and worst comes to worst, you and Fish get under the covers, take a nice bottle of scotch. Well, with me, it's scotch, or it might be wine, and tune on cable TV, put on Netflix or whatever you got, and just don't worry about anything.
That's right. That's the way we need to go. All
Yeah.
right, Malcolm. My best to your lovely wife, Anna.
I will speak to you next week.
Okay. Bye-bye now.